Building Blocks, 2025 in Tel Aviv, the future of tech.
So for the panel, I have four amazing people, OGs in Ethereum. First, I have Amin Soleimani, who's built and shipped many, many different things, including, I mean, you'll introduce yourself in a second. We have Eva Balian. He used to be the head of foundation at the Graph. We have Eric. We have Eric Suri, who was at the Ethereum Foundation and is now leaving. Wait till we find out why. And then we have Jeremy Millar. Yeah. Jeremy Millar, who's one of the top guys at Consensus. So all these guys are going to give you some like deep insights right from within where all the actions happen. And we're playing musical chairs. That's what's happening. Oh, under the name. All right, fair enough. All right, how are you guys doing? There's an extra mic here. Take it, Jeremy. So, I mean, briefly, I would say each one of you can introduce yourselves. And I think, like, what's your origin story? Like, why did you come to Ethereum? Why was it interesting for you? What was compelling in the narrative? And, yeah, Jeremy, do you want to start?
Sure. I got into blockchain in 2015 when I was working at a tech investment bank and looking a lot at fintech and started doing a lot of deep diving on the space and where it was going and decided that I wanted to be a builder and join a company and ended up at Consensus and working with Amin and Eva for a number of years. Now we're all off doing our own thing.
Awesome. Eva?
So what got me into Ethereum is I was working in banking with management consultants and helping some of them refurbish their architecture and realized that there was no hope and was really inspired by the agency and access that Ethereum provides that banks don't provide. My history, I would say, is I used to work at Omise Go and the Ethereum Foundation for a little bit, but spent the last 5 years at the Graph, leading the Graph Foundation, and just recently stepped down about a month and a half ago, and now I'm focusing on just rediscovering Ethereum and board member of Optimism.
Amin?
I was living on the balcony of a rationalist house in Berkeley, working on a Twitter news aggregator, living in perpetual fear that the Twitter API would get shut down on me and my business would go under. And then I learned about Ethereum, and I thought it was really cool that I could make unstoppable programs. And then I read this blog post called Meditations on Moloch, and it was like the closest thing to a religious experience I had. And it identified Moloch as this like rationalist god of coordination failure. And then I put two and two together. I was like, Ethereum is how we slay Moloch, how we scale up human coordination. And so I packed my bags and went to Brooklyn to work for Consensus and hang out with Jeremy. And yeah, now I do privacy tech stuff. We'll get back to that.
Amazing. Eric?
I covered Visa at a hedge fund in Boston. I downloaded MetaMask, despite what compliance said. I lost a lot of money on Olympus DAO and then had to figure out taxes. And then I read the Flashbots paper, I read Elie Ben-Sassan's paper, and I just quit my job. And then someone from the EF 2 years later hired me on Discord. So
Amazing. Hiring on Discord, that's that's the best way to get hired. All right. So with this in mind, what do you guys think was like the peak Ethereum? Where were we the most aligned? Where were we the most sort of like hyper-focused on the future and what we're doing here? Any moment, this could be like an article, a Twitter, or something like that.
So one example of where Ethereum got really, really aligned was the merge. It was launching the beacon chain and the merge. I mean, Eric can probably talk about it more accurately than I can, but getting all the client teams to work together, all the testing that went into it. So launching the beacon chain, I think, and the merge to ETH 2.0 or whatever we call it now is one moment where I think you saw a really strong coordination across the entire industry working together.
You stole my answer. His name was Danny Ryan.
When Danny Ryan was with us.
He's back.
He's back.
Yeah, the merge, and I'll say, I mean, this maybe predates my time in Ethereum, but I would say, actually no, I was here then. When all the like weird DeFi food things were launching in 2020, it was like 6 months after COVID. Everyone was peak boredom. MakerDAO almost broke, and it was that was peak DeFi. what did we call it? DeFi 2.0? That was
Yeah.
still 1.0. 2.0 was a bad idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was, I don't know if that was alignment. That was fun.
Yeah, that was fun. Food tokens, farms, sushi, like all of that was incredible. Yeah.
For me, it was like launching Moloch DAO. So after I left Consensus, worked on some projects, and then I started. It was like the pretty much like bear market bottom, and we thought the EF didn't have much runway. We wanted to get together and like save Ethereum. I went around to ETH Denver being like, "Hello, would you like to join a DAO to save Ethereum?" Put in 100 ETH, which was, at that time was $100. So it was like 10 grand to join this DAO. It was the third DAO ever. We got like 20 ETH OGs to start giving grants to Ethereum open source projects to advance the ecosystem. And then after a while, Vitalik joined, Joe Lubin joined, Consensus and the EF threw in money. So we had a big budget. ETH went up a bit. And we gave a bunch of grants to Tornado Cash. The future was bright. We had no idea what was about to happen. We thought we were about to live in a very privacy-friendly future, and I think that was the peak because then we learned a lot of things.
Yeah. Ava, any special moment for you?
Yeah, I would say after the 2017 Bitcoin pump, it was a pretty rough bear market, especially folks on this stage can probably contest to that. But there was this sort of like childlike whimsy occurring in Ethereum where all these really cool things were launched. So like Uniswap, ENS, CryptoKitties, all, Moloch DAO, all launched at that time. And it was a period of innovation for innovation's sake when people hadn't made too much money yet. And really we were like building for the cool of it. So I think that there's opportunity to get back to that sort of like toddler phase where like we're on the playground really just enjoying ourselves.
Yeah, I have a moment, actually, I just remember this. In ETH Denver 2020, when you threw that house party in the Airbnb that then didn't allow any crypto people to be there for like 4 years or something, we were talking with Mariano from Maker, and it was like, Ethereum is a circle jerk. It's just like us jerking each other off. And, I think that was peak, because people who were there to build and like ship like weird things, even though their only clients were their friends.
I remember that. That ETH Denver too, because it was like 2020, like ETH was still very low. It was right before DeFi summer, and the theme was that people were laughing at Uniswap because the entire 2019 Uniswap volume was 1 day of Coinbase volume. And so they were like, who uses decentralized exchanges? This is a joke. Why would anybody ever use this? And then DeFi summer happened, and now Uniswap's like a global, phenomenon.
Now Uniswap does almost the same volume as Coinbase with like, a tenth of the people. All right, and I have another, we'll say this later. So we have this, Ethereum is kind of like peaking, or maybe in the mind share of, the folks here, maybe some of the folks in the audience. What went wrong? What is this? Is it like the ultrasound money? Is it the communism? Is it the blob fees where people are like, oh yes, kumbaya, they're just gonna pay fees, and by the way, I try to make like a Donald Trump lip sync thing where he goes, the L2s, they're not paying anything to Ethereum. We're giving them all the security. They're not paying their fair share. But so which one of these? Like where did we start going downhill?
I can start. So I think that Ethereum has these beautiful values, but there's the spectrum of sort of like realism and values, and I think we went a little bit too far in the values direction. And one example that comes to mind for those who might have been around, Ethereum Community Fund, the ECF, that was around in 2018, 2019. Elon's laughing because he probably realizes what I'm talking about. But basically the ECF was intended to be sort of this Ethereum grants-giving organization, and yet they put on stage Polkadot, Cosmos, like everyone who's a competitor on stage, and it was this sort of kumbaya, value system that I think kind of, missed the boat because obviously competition's important. Having competent people is important. And I think we leaned a little bit too far in the, everybody can be happy together and circle jerky, but, like holding the parachute together. And that doesn't actually work in the real world. So I wish, like if we had gone back, I wish that we had had a little bit of that realism early on, even though we wanted to retain those values.
Yeah, anyone else?
I think we kind of got arrogant. Like we were used to winning and having the moral high ground. And the tricky part about that is that we were often right, but not always. And so, we called, for example, EOS a scam, and it was. And then we called Tron and Binance Chain a scam, and those have actually created real value for people. Tether, which we also called a scam, is like the most used stablecoin on Tron, like in Iran. So like, if I don't know, Iranians can use that instead of having their money in the mullah's banks, which is great.
Which, I mean, that's literally the point, right, of why
Yeah.
we're doing this. And we're like, oh, it's a scam.
And so we called FTX a scam. We were right. We called Solana a scam, and maybe it was a scam, more a scam while SBF was around, but then it has since delivered, value and become a real competitor. And so, like, we need to sort of think about, the real value that some of these things are delivering on, and not that even if it might not meet our like moral standards sometimes.
Yeah, Eric, Jeremy?
I'll say something a little controversial. given
Yes, we
where
want
I-
controversial.
Where I currently work, I think we've leaned far too much into R&D. I mean, it was fine once upon a time to just think up fancy mechanisms and hope someone ships them and hope someone uses the thing that is shipped on that piece of code. That is not serving us anymore. I would go so far as to say, protocol. If this was a fixed sum game and we could only allocate, let's say, $100, I think we need to move some from protocol R&D to products. Like, we need people who actually understand go-to-market and competitive frameworks and basic stuff like jobs to be done. What is the job to be done for Ethereum? You can ask that to the average EFer. They will have no idea what that is. I think this is the easier problem to fix, because I actually think it's harder to bootstrap strong R&D. I think it's easier to go out and find product people, or ideally, I mean, the other problem we have that's not unique to Ethereum, every ecosystem has this. Our industry is awful at talent development. Like, how many young devs and builders actively seek performance reviews and feedback, and there's some type of criteria for them? There's no semblance of this. I mean, some orgs do it well, most don't, but these are basic fixes, right? Like, we have an HR problem.
So I'm going to take a different perspective. I don't think Ethereum has failed. I think it's just unintended consequences. And I think I think a bunch of things happened at the same time where you just couldn't foresee what was going to happen. So optimistic layer 2s and the merge sort of overlapped in a way that wasn't fully appreciated at the time, right? And so we got to proof of stake and we got to execution clients at the same time that Polygon was rolling out and the other, right? And so we had, to a certain extent, this idea that we were going to move, which moved us to this roll-up-centric roadmap, which was the goal, right? All right, it wasn't Plasma and Omisgo and the original thing, but we've gotten to a point where we have something like sharding, right? Now, so to a certain extent, it's worked, but the so if you also remember during DeFi summer, people were complaining that mainnet transactions were too expensive. That's not a problem anymore. There wasn't enough block space. That's not a problem anymore, right? So,
but I would say that there is a problem. Like, I remember when this was like proposed, people were saying, wait, Uniswap is going to be on what chain? That means that all the liquidity is going to be there. And then people were like, yeah, it's fine, it's going to be fine. And I don't think the EF like really looked into this.
I mean, let's zoom out. I don't think anyone's arguing Ethereum has failed. If you zoom out, Ethereum is winning. We're just winning less. 80 to 90% share of all new tokenizations happen on Ethereum. It is the one. There is no. Okay, let's say you had an RFP situation with a central bank or any institution. Ethereum,
only going to be Ethereum.
Ethereum is the obvious answer. It is always in the room. As a concept, there's no person in that room, which is the issue. And then like Ripple sneaks in there, or like some other chains sneak in there. But it's the obvious answer, right? It's just we just need to ship the thing, right? All these are very fixable.
yeah, but I think the challenge today is what is the thing, right? And so I don't think, like, crypto Twitter likes to say Ethereum has a marketing problem. I don't think it does. I think Ethereum has a strategy problem. And I think the strategy problem in Ethereum is your definition of the Ethereum strategy, Eric, and Amin's and Eva's and mine are all different. And the reason why is there isn't one concrete strategy. So here, what a strategy would look like, and I'm not saying this is what the strategy should be, but I'm just saying to your question of go-to-market and product and what have you. A strategy would be to say, we are going to get to base sequencing in 2 years, right? A base sequencer is going to work like this. The key interface to the base sequencer for the L2s will be the gateways. A key aspect of the base sequencer will be credibly neutral DA, right? You could outline the architectures in Lego block architecture and said, we're trying to get there in 2 years. And along the way, we are going to do hard forks every 6 months or 3 months or what have you. We're going to, right? You could outline a strategy and a process to get to, assuming base sequencing is what you want for the future of Ethereum, and I think it's a good idea. You could outline a specific strategy, and then the industry, the EF, could organize around implementing it. So simply having that, and I think we will get there, to me, that's the thing that's really missing.
I mean, I hate to quote Kyle Samani, but he was like, I think a year ago, Ethereum has no North Star or something. It's like, fuck you, Kyle. You're
no,
right.
It does. Ethereum does. That's not. I don't think that that's true. I think Ethereum.
I don't agree with that at all.
Yeah, I think Ethereum does. Go ahead, Eric.
I'll respond to that point, which is a really good one. Like if you take something like the merge, and also I'll say scalability broadly, that was always in the cards from the start. Those were two very obvious areas where they were. What accelerated them was the fact that there was very clear community feedback. Like there was a clear constituent set you could go to, which is basically anyone that's used MetaMask on mainnet before. And they were like, hey, why is this so damn expensive? Fix this, right? For something like base sequencing, that voice needs to emerge. Like, who actually needs base sequencing? I know who will use base sequencing, but
how much ETH needs to be sold before we get to this?
But this is where the product part is. The reason why you need base sequencing is composability, so that you don't have this question, so you don't have federated Uniswap liquidity. It's all visible. I mean, the goal of base sequencing, in my opinion, and I'm sorry for jumping in, is you need to make Ethereum look all like one chain.
Yes.
It needs to go, like, people talk about being Ethereum aligned. Where the technology needs to get to is it all needs to look like one chain, just like the internet looks like one network, even though it's not. And that's the why for base sequencing.
Yeah, we're often victims of our own success. Like we sat there and we're like, guys, mainnet's expensive. We made all of these L2s for you to use. They're very cheap. We even made blobs. So we have a new data storage model, and then everyone leaves and goes to the L2s and pays nothing back to Ethereum. We're like, wait, no, come back. So we also invested in the basic the L2 roadmap to the exclusion of base rollups and also scaling the L1. And then Vitalik wrote a blog post recently that was like, actually, by the way, if we do want to scale up the censorship-resistant properties of our L2s, you need to scale the mainnet like at least 10 times. And you're like, thank you, Vitalik. Like, appreciate you writing this. It's important to align everybody on this goal. But it's like, has this not also been true for the entirety of the last 5 years? We couldn't have figured this out like any other time in this process.
I think kind of echoing what Jeremy said, there's a bit of a lack of strategy here where everybody screamed about scalability, L2s flourished, and then everybody's now yelling at the L2s for not bringing the value back to Ethereum. And it's actually not Optimism or Arbitrum's fault that Ethereum isn't charging enough for blobs, or that Ethereum hasn't figured out a way to bring that value back. So I agree. I think there's like an overall, what did Ethereum go wrong? Where did Ethereum go wrong? It's kind of like planning forward the implications of the roadmaps that we've had. And it doesn't mean we're too late, but it does mean that L2s have a lot more leverage now. And so you could think about it less of just Ethereum and actually a flourishing EVM ecosystem now, where you have quite a few side chains or EVMs, Monad and others are about to go to market, and they don't necessarily have an incentive to play nice. But if Ethereum can kind of figure out its economics a little better, then they will have to return some of that value back to L1.
I'm going to flip the blob question on its head, and I'll pose it to you as I think we overestimated how much L2s would get used, right? Like there was some presupposed like minimum pricing and demand floor, and we have not hit that yet, which
Go onto the block explorers for some of these chains, and you page through transaction after transaction with no content, or block after block with no transactions.
Yes.
I'm not saying on OP or Arbitrum, like on the big ones, there's tons of activity. But you go onto some of the smaller ones, and it's literally pages and pages and pages of empty blocks.
Yes, go on L2 beat and then go past maybe the 5th one, right? There's nothing there.
Yeah, but Base, Base, they're getting $50 million in a month.
Well,
they're
that's-
paying nothing to Ethereum.
Well, they have good distribution and good
Have you
products.
said thank you?
They aren't going to say thank you.
I learned this term in Israel. It's like the fryer or something. What do you call it?
Like fry, like sucker.
Yeah. And so like Ethereum has created an enormous amount of value and like captured not all of it. We have in some ways been the fryer for many of these chains, and it does expand the Ethereum brand. It builds EVM network effects. People are downloading Ethereum wallets and stuff, but not all of that goes back to Ethereum itself, and so this ends up being a problem for the ETH holders, whoever they are at this point, to try to address. And I guess their voice is still not loud enough. It's like
You have to be louder, Amin.
It's a suicide
You're not
mission.
loud enough, Amin.
Yeah, I'm the problem.
Or the economics need to be looked at differently, right?
Yeah, we definitely need to tweak that. I mean, I don't want to get into the issuance curve topic, but like, there's a lot of things around Ethereum economics that were thought about, I would say, a good amount, but not enough. Like, these are very important parameters. We need to refine them. 1559 might need to be revisited. Like, there's all sorts of optimizations. This is all downstream of we just need better products, right? That's the big one.
So yeah, okay. So I mean, we jumped kind of to the solution, and I wanted to ask a question of like, where were you in the problem? Where did you feel like, looking back now in your journey, where were you like starry-eyed, optimistic, kumbaya stuff? I can say that I was a part of like the whole DAO camp of like, yes, everybody make decisions about everything. And in DXDAO, we had like $150 million, and we couldn't get anything done. We literally could not get anything done. And so like, I mean, these things happen. You come starry-eyed and you think like this is going to fix the world and super utopian, and like, I don't know, a moment where you thought you were part of the problem, or looking back, you were a part of the problem.
I built the first L2 on Ethereum for one of my companies, SpankChain, to tip cam models to dance live. It was called Spank Live. It was launched in 2018, and I thought that payment channels and state channels were going to save the world and scale Ethereum. That was very wrong. We over-engineered this thing, and it was not very useful to the users. And then during the bear market, all of our paying users went broke because it was a crypto-only platform. And what we helped accomplish was to rule that out as a scaling solution for Ethereum. That was my contribution to the scaling roadmap.
I would say similar to what Eric was talking about, the HR problem. I think that a lot of people in crypto have never had a job. That's sort of like the truth. And part of it is just because it's a very young industry, and so their first job ends up being in crypto. And so a lot of people don't learn how to fire people. They don't learn how to grow a team correctly. And that has implications. It means that people get complacent with competency, maybe don't feel good about changing the structure of their teams. And so I've been part of that problem, and whether not firing people fast enough, or myself maybe not leaving fast enough. One of the things that we tried to do at the Graph is we realized there was this massive pipeline problem in Web3, where every protocol was recruiting from each other, and they were poaching each other. And it actually became a real problem because you'd have to have no poach lists. And depending on how you felt about that protocol, you either would or wouldn't follow that. And so we started creating these flywheels for people to actually enter that had no idea about crypto. They could learn about, maybe it was building subgraphs, maybe it was Solidity, or maybe you were non-technical, and then kind of train you up and then set you free into the ecosystem. And we felt this was very positive sum because for the Graph especially, it doesn't matter what chain or sort of what L2 or EVM you build on. It also doesn't matter what dApp you build. But the more dApps that exist, the more usage there is, the more data there is, the more state there is on the chain. So we felt it was sort of a positive sum solution that we actually think more teams should take on is, the more talent you bring into the ecosystem, the more people there are to hire. Somebody that works at another team for first 2 years actually becomes incredibly talented, and then you can hire them after they've kind of learned the hard lessons.
Yeah, I have lots of questions about that. Like, can you teach why this ecosystem matters and stuff like that? Because I feel like people need to sort of join their religion, and it's hard to do that for people from the outside. But I mean, this is outside the
I actually think we've over-indexed on the religion in a way. Like, we actually need way more competent people who don't give a fuck, and give a fuck enough, but actually care way more about shipping product or meeting deadlines or having OKRs. And we don't have to go so far as the Google model, but we should go so far as again, knowing how to fire someone or having a roadmap. And so many teams only hear about their roadmap or the desire for a roadmap when people on Twitter are yelling about it, and that's already too late.
Yeah.
I guess one of the things that I wish, this would be with the EEA, with the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. I think we did a really good job at getting institutional credibility into Ethereum, but what I wish we had been able to do was to get the large ecosystem players all together in one room. So Coinbase runs a bunch of Ethereum nodes, right? A venue where Arbitrum, Optimism, Consensus, Coinbase, all the big industry players could really collaborate and give feedback to the EF. That interface, I think is something that, and maybe Etherealize and the new EF will succeed at doing that. But I think building that interface is really important, and it solves some of to get that, because what you really need to do strategy well is a product market feedback loop, right? And the biggest users of Ethereum are the big players, right? Coinbase is a big user of Ethereum, right? Arbitrum, Optimism, Consensus, whoever, these are big users, and trying to get a product market feedback loop is one of the important things to do with strategy.
Yeah, do you want to go?
Yeah, I just wanted to add another. So it's the Tornado Cash story is also another time that we were very kumbaya. Somebody came up to me, when we were launching this thing, and they were like, "Hey man, don't you think this might be used for crime?" And I'm like, "No, this is for our personal privacy, And we're sort of in line with over-indexing on the religion. Permissionlessness is one of our favorite buzzwords, and that unfortunately means that it's also permissionless for using by the people you might not want to use it. And so I think for us, it's been a journey of, raise your hand if you've heard of Tornado Cash and what happened in the audience. Okay, almost everybody. There was North Korea hacked a video game for hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't know why they had hundreds of millions of dollars, but then they put some of that into Tornado, and then it got sanctioned, and then my friends went to prison, Roman Storm in the US and Alexei in the Netherlands. And since then, we've had to learn that our actions have consequences. This is not how I expected Ethereum to obtain geopolitical relevance in its one of the first times. And so we learned that with power comes responsibility. And since then, Vitalik and I wrote this paper called Privacy Pools, and are trying to incorporate the outcomes of our experiments into our new mental models of how to make progress and what makes sense to do. And so now I'm the CTO of a company called Oxbow, and we're launching Privacy Pools in 4 days, and it's going to be Tornado Cash but without the terrorists. So I think now I'm I go to regulator meetups. It's FinCEN, the SEC, the CFTC, the Department of Justice, a bunch of lawyers, and me, and I'm a compliance guy. And so this is sort of it was a turning point, not only for the ecosystem, I think, but also for me as well.
I mean, I don't know if everyone understood the irony of your last comment, but
I'm glad you did, Jeremy.
So I mean, we didn't touch on something, and I think it's the last 4 years of the U.S. administration and the regime and the SEC, and that being the most hostile thing ever, and that has changed. And also the fact that maybe the Ethereum Foundation was no, we're not doing any policy stuff, which is very bad compared to your competitors are going to do that. Yeah. And I guess we're going to talk about that maybe in a minute. I want to we have in a few more minutes we'll do questions. So if you want to come up, stand here, and I'll give you the microphone if anyone wants to ask a question. But before we go to the questions, I want to hear from you about Etherealize. Like you're leaving the Ethereum Foundation. You're like Etherealize is going to be the second foundation. By the way, I'm totally in for that name, right? I'm a big fan of
His words, not mine. It's etherealized. It's not the second foundation.
It's the second foundation.
It's the second foundation.
It is not. It is decidedly not. So I can explain what. I'll explain what it is.
Yeah.
Currently, the team is 9 people, 9 full-time people. I have not fully transitioned out of the EF yet, so now I have 2 emails. It's very confusing. It is not a nonprofit. It is for profit, which is good. We need revenue as an industry. We need to build real things. What is the target customer segment? It is US TradFi. Why is it US TradFi? Because the use case of Ethereum is finance. Not that I don't love Farcaster. Farcaster is lovely, but it is finance. And we need to ship products that people like Goldman Sachs would use. And that doesn't mean us shipping an L2. It likely means us working with L2s. And like zooming out now, like we have, I would say, too much abundance in Ethereum of like, if you look for anything in any part of the stack, you have 5 to 10 different options. There is no Gartner to look at for a CTO to be like, this is the best thing. And what's worse is there is no bundled thing that you can just give to an enterprise, right? Not going to say we're just going to bundle. We have a couple working prototypes already, but think that's probably the first segment. The other thing we will do, and this might look a little more like a second foundation, we're going to incubate and probably spin out.
It's the second foundation.
Second foundation.
Like we're not calling it that.
We're calling it that.
It means words. This will focus in 3 areas. Probably, the 3 that are defined right now, policy, so specifically the US. Why US? Well, if you agree that finance is the main use case, the US is still the home of global finance. And if Ethereum loses the US, Ethereum loses. It's that simple. Strategically, I would say the EF, I think, has made the right decision to stay out of that debate for now, but the world has changed and someone else needs to step in. So that will be, I'll say us, but it's likely going to be a separate team inside Etherealize. Ecosystem development, which is kind of what I do now. I call it special projects and PsyOps. And then the last one is R&D, but we have too much R, we need more D. Like we need more.
More D, folks.
Well,
yeah, more D.
And specifically more product.
Yes, exactly. Product will be the for-profit side. By development, or I'll say applied R&D, I mean, we have a lot of great ETH research posts. Yeah. We need implementations of a lot of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think people need to, maybe just to expand on that and explain a mental model that someone explained to me around this. You can go from big capital R lowercase d to lowercase r to capital D, and it's a spectrum. R&D isn't one thing. And you have to make a strategic decision around where you're going to be on pure research. So you could be doing cryptographic group theory. I don't even know if it exists. That's big R, right? Right? Down to trying to build accelerated Starks or something, which is like D, big D. So I think people need to understand that is a spectrum, and where the EF.
We're going to do some hard R research.
And big D.
Let's avoid the euphemisms. So, like, I think in that spectrum world, right, the EF is capital R, lowercase d, and other people are going to be like lowercase r, capital D.
Yeah, more of that. So we have people want to ask questions. Yeah. Yeah, come. Yes.
Hey guys, Leon. We're building an ensemble platform for AI agents. So we have a few cycles in Ethereum, and the growth came from other places, like retail, enterprise. What do you think the next growth engine is going to be for Ethereum next year?
I'm actually still kind of bullish on this whole network state idea. I know that it might seem like a LARP in some senses, but there's some really powerful tools that we can create that are actually better than what exists today. And so, like for example, I went to Ukraine, Kiev, for like 10 days. I went to ETH Kiev with Vitalik, and we met the Rarimo team who built this thing called Freedom Tool. And it allowed us to, they basically trolled the Russian elections by providing you a way to do zero knowledge proof of passport and then vote in the Russian election in a way that's like provably not, you can't tamper with it. And then I was there with one of my Iranian buddies, and we realized that this also worked for the Islamic Republic of Iran passport out of the box. And so we decided to troll the Islamic Republic election, which was happening in like a week, by using their passports, building an app, forking theirs, making it all Farsi, and then allowing people to vote no confidence in the Islamic Republic of Iran election. And you might take it for granted when your election system like works properly and people trust the government, but in places where they don't, this kind of thing is enormously powerful and has a lot of potential to bring in new people that I think we need.
Yeah, so I mean, I want to kind of like double down on this. And I mean, I spoke to Balaji just like earlier today, and I think we're going to see dramatic geopolitical shifts in the coming 5 to 10 years, and new lines are going to be drawn. And I don't know, I feel like there are places like, there are places that will be using, you know, this network collaboration first, like let's form a group, let's raise capital, and then do things on the ground. Hopefully in the Middle East, we're going to see a lot more independent entities. And yeah, I think this is what, you know, permissionless disruption of authoritarian regimes is really the place where, I mean, I want to see Ethereum shine in.
Yeah, I'm bullish on the Iranian network state. Stay tuned for that one. You know, private voting. And I just finished reading the, what was it called? A Jewish State by Herzl. Now I'm like a full Zionist. It was great. I'm like sending my Iranian friends memos. I'm like, we need to learn from the Jews. They figured this out like 125 years ago.
From a practical perspective, like to move along the spectrum towards PMF, it's RWA-backed stablecoins are driving volume on Ethereum. Like it very clearly, the stablecoin volumes are going up and to the right very quickly today, like right now. And so if you're going to ask like where's the next immediate amount of volume coming from, well, it's right there.
I would add that I'm personally excited for the non-stablecoin RWAs because I think we haven't even touched the surface of commodities, and commodities, you know, are a large part of finance. The other thing is privacy. I don't think any chain ecosystem cares as much about privacy as Ethereum. So whether it's like Starkware, Aztec, Oxbow, I think the recent Tornado Cash being removed off of the sanctions list is really reinvigorating the community, that regulators are actually supportive of personal privacy. So I think privacy will stick to Ethereum.
Amazing. Well, I think we're out of time, right? Goldie, are you coming? Coming to let us go? Anyway, thanks, guys. Thanks for listening to us.
Thank you. Toda.
Building Blocks 2025 in Tel Aviv.